Слава Україні!
Glory to Ukraine.
Сьогодні 1 грудня 2022 року.
We have the 1st of December this year. Welcome at the Military Media Center, the only communication platform of the Security and Defense Forces of Ukraine. We are starting our weekly briefing on the operational situation of the Russian-Ukrainian war and the security situation in Ukraine. Today at this briefing you will see the fragments of the Kh-55 SM cruise missile used by Russia to attack Ukraine. The briefing will be held by the Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Hanna, Deputy Head of the Main Operations Directorate of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Brigadier General Oleksii Hromov, Acting Director of the Implementation Planning Department of the Main Directorate of the National Guard of Ukraine, Colonel Mykola Urshalovych, Spokesperson for the State Emergency Service of Ukraine, Colonel of the Civil Protection Service, Oleksandr Khorunzhyi, Head of the Organisational and Analytical Support and Operational Response Department of the National Police of Ukraine, Police General of the 3rd rank, Oleksii Serhieiev, and the representative of the Central Military Scientific Directorate of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Colonel Mykola Danyliuk. Please welcome Hanna Maliar. Good morning, everyone. We are starting our weekly briefing of the Defense Forces. Every week at this center, all security and defense forces participating in the defense of Ukraine brief the information to the world about the situation on the front lines. We are absolutely open. We stay united at all front lines, including the informational one. We thank everyone who could come here for your attention and for the support provided by our partners. 281 days of resistance of Russian armed aggression. The whole front line is in a confrontation against Russia and its satellites. Our defenders hold the rank and do not make the enemy possible to commit crimes. The quantitative advantage is still in Russia. However, we are tenfold stronger and of weapons and manpower. Our success is measured not only by the liberation of settlements and our people, but also by retention of the front line. And yes, you can see that the intensity of liberation of our territory has decreased. However, our forces are aimed at retenting the terrain in hot spots in Donbass, namely in Bakhmut. Ukraine Defense Forces control the situation in its operational areas, and Ukrainian authorities maintain the operability of our services. We work out different courses of action, including with our international partners. We know our plans and our forces, and we do our best to liberate our territories within the internationally recognized border. More information you will hear from the representative of the General Staff. It is very important for us the war on the informational front line, because Russia carries on war on the informational front line. That is why we address our people every week with recommendations and proposals how every one of us can become a warrior on the informational front line. The first thing first is the moderate consumption of information and your activity in the social networks. These are the basic steps that will make everyone a warrior of the front line. Posts in networks with grids and other military information become the open sources information for the enemy and can be targeted by missiles or its propaganda. Please be aware of that when you post happy news and other success of our forces. And now I'll talk about our prisoners. The Kremlin power continues to damage our reputation to our warriors. They try to impose the meaning of inappropriate treatment and care of POWs. Sometimes you can see sham and fake videos of illegitimate treatment with POW. I want to remind you that Russian soldiers came to our land to kill, rape and loot. Those of them who have been captured by defense forces of Ukraine are being held according to the international law. Complete access is given for them from international organizations. That is why Ukraine complies with every norms and standards. At the same time, unfortunately, we do not have the same treatment and conditions from the Russian side. But it's obvious because we have nothing to wait from Russian forces who project their forces to die. We record and document every crime, and we will do everything possible to hold Russia accountable for that. Every week, we also report the information on the front lines during the week before. During the previous week, the security situation around Ukraine remained difficult but controlled. In order to reach the administrative borders of the Donetsk region, Russian Federation concentrates its efforts on offensive actions in Bakhmut and Avdiivka directions. In other directions, Russia tries to hold and retain the captured territories. The enemy is redeploying. It tries to rehabilitate the combat effectiveness of separate units. It also tried to create new large units and elements in order to engage mobilized personnel and send them to Ukraine. Russian forces performed cohesion and interaction measures on the territory of Belarus. The strategic goals of the Kremlin concerning Ukraine are the same. The Kremlin is aimed at destroying the energy system of our state through massive missile attacks of infrastructure installations around Ukraine. The high intensity of actions is concentrated in Donetsk and Bakhmut directions. And in order to destabilize the situation in Ukraine, the Russian Federation will continue to launch missile attacks and also perform offensive actions in Donetsk direction. At the same time, the social-political situation on the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine is degrading. The main purpose of this is the arrival of a large number of newly mobilized Russian personnel to the settlements on the temporarily occupied territories. The majority of such occupants staying at markets and other sites where they buy food, clothing. They treat the local population with intolerance. When they communicate with local population, the Russian servicemen are unclear about their condition and they are afraid of being sent to the front line. From their conversations, we also know that Russian thoughts on the increase of large number of mobilized personnel is worthless. During the first fights, we saw that the occupants have the desire to avoid participation in hostilities. Because of the low level of training, these occupants cannot carry on war. Every week, during this briefing, we also discuss the issues of supply, ammunition, and winter clothing to the armed forces of Ukraine. That is why, from November 24 to November 30, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine sent to the armed forces of Ukraine more than 10,000 of armor vests, more than 4,000 of helmets, 76,000 of winter footwear. In addition, we also sent more than 62,000 winter trousers, more than 62,000 of BDUs, more than 44,000 of winter hats, more than 22,000 of fleece jackets, and almost 90,000 of demi-season and winter underwear. I want to remind that the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine has already formed a reserve of protection of up to 200,000 armor vests and 100,000 of helmets. As for the personal armor protective equipment, we have the sustainable process. We enrich our reserves, issue the ammunition and clothing to our units, and we also give the replacement of such equipment. As for the winter clothing, you can see that the nature is high, because we report about this every week. In average, in November, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine sent 10,000 pieces per day. Such momentum is very high. The same concerns the footwear. And now we talk about the official registration of such pieces of equipment and their distribution to the forces in the field. And what the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine sent to the Armed Forces of Ukraine, after that, the Armed Forces of Ukraine do the distribution themselves within the units and other elements of the armed forces. If we talk about statistics, then in general, we have already sent 85% of winter jackets purchased by the contracts of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, and 10% of the material technical assistance from our partners, and 5% is from charity assistance. As for the payments and issuance of our servicemen, we have already talked about the increase of such expenditures by the war, and what we had set for the budget in 2022 for a year, we issue and pay these allowances just per month. This is just for your information. As for the payments, as I have already said last week, we will see some changes in a week. All money that had to be financed in November for October had been done by the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. We perform such payments in October for September and so on. Just for your information, in November this year, for the previous month, namely October, the payments increased plus 6.8% than in October for September. In December, this month, we also expect the increase of such payments. The allowances for families of killed and perished soldiers is also ongoing. And every week we also talk about our victories in legal frontline, because our policy lies in the solution of conflicts and other issues between the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. And this is very important for our suppliers to supply and deliver high-quality goods and services as well. In addition, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine carries on policy of returning of all market and other businesses illegally seized before. That is why during the previous week we have 2 positive trials for the benefit of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. I am talking about 456.8 million of hryvnias for the benefit of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. And the first case concerns the inadequate and not timely construction sites of ammunition depots and shelters. And the second positive trial for the benefit of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine is 28.3 million of hryvnias for improper compliance with provisions and standards concerning the supply of oil products for the armed forces of Ukraine. We are talking about gas. Thank you for your attention.
Дякуємо Ганні Маляр, заступниці міністра оборони України, за інформацію зі сфери Міністерства оборони. Для інформування про обстановку на фронтах російсько-української війни я запрошую
Please welcome Brigadier General Oleksii Hromov.
Доброго дня.
Good morning, everyone.
Вітаю шановних присутніх і глядачів нашого
I'm glad to see our spectators and our guests today. The enemy continues to carry on war and large-scale armed aggression against Ukraine.
навчальних закладів, навчальних центрів, з'єднань та військових частин країни-агресора
Russian forces try to perform training of mobilized personnel within highly military training institutions and other centers. The enemy continues to redeploy personnel and military equipment to combat areas in order to man new units and those units who have sustained losses. The enemy is also trying to refill weapons and POL products. The Russian aggressors continues to launch missiles on civilian infrastructure and other installations around Ukraine. We still have a threat of massive missile attacks of the energy system of Ukraine and other military installations. During the week, the Tu-95 MS strategic bombers crews of the Russian aggressor performed flights in the airspace in Saratov, Samarsk and Orebursk regions, as well as on the eastern part of the Russian Federation and in the Barents Sea. They also used refuelers and 2 tankers IL-70As. The enemy military and transport aviation performed redeployment of personnel and weapons and equipment on the airfields of Mykola, Rostov-on-Don, Central and Taganrog. On the territory of Belarusia, there are no signs of creation of offensive units and elements. The designated Belarusian units and armed forces continue to perform their tasks in the areas bordering Ukraine. In order to perform their training performance, the Belarusian forces continued the term of trainings to December the 5th. In the future, the state of Belarus will continue to participate in Russian aggression against Ukraine, namely by giving its territory and airspace for the enemy, as well as ammunition and weapons and equipment. The enemy continues to retain task forces in border Bryansk, Kursk and Belgorod regions of Russia for demonstration actions. During the week, the Russian aggressor performed 39 shelling of our positions, 6 in Chernihiv region and 13 in Sumy region. We also expect the enemy to remain its military presence in order to prevent the projection of our troops to threatening directions within the area of operation. The enemy will continue to launch artillery and missile attacks from the territory of the Russian Federation, and we do not exclude that the enemy will also perform armed provocations with violation of state border of Ukraine. However, the Russian priority is the same, to retain territories in Donetsk and Luhansk regions, as well as to maintain the land corridor to the Crimea. Thus, on the east of our country, the enemy concentrates in efforts in offensive actions in Bakhmut and Avdiivka direction. In Kupiansk, Liman and Novopavlovsk direction, as well as in Orikhovo, the enemy performs active defense on the captured borders. During the week in Kharkiv and Kupiansk direction, the enemy performed offensive actions in the vicinity of Zibene, Berestove, Novoselivske and Stermakhivka, however with no success. The enemy engaged civilian infrastructure installation in the vicinity of Chuguyev, Kupiansk, Orlyanske, Kivsharivka, and other aviation strikes in the vicinity of Kislivka, Berestove, Novoselivske, Stermakhivka, and Pershatravneve. In Liman direction, the enemy performed offensive actions in the vicinity of Dibrova, Bilogorivka, Verkhokamensky, and Spirne, however with no success. The enemy performed missile attacks in the vicinity of Slovyansk and Belenki, and aviation strikes in the vicinity of Bilogorivka, Zolotarivka, and Spirne. The enemy engaged civilian infrastructure installation. The enemy continues to perform second line in defense in the Liman direction. Thus, we saw the redeployment of troops of up to 100 units of equipment in order to perform engineer fortification of terrain. In Bakhmut direction, the defenders of Ukraine repelled the attempts of the enemy to assault Bilogorivka, Yakovlivka, Soledar, Bakhmutske, Opetne, Mayorsk, and Punishne. The enemy tries to send their reserves in Klishchiivka, Andriivka, and Kurdyumivka. The enemy also engaged by aviation in the vicinity of Vesele, Soledar, Bakhmut, Andriivka, Kurdyumivka, and Mayorsk. In Avdiivka and Novopavlovsk direction, the enemy advanced in the vicinity of Krasnohorivka, Vodyane, Pervomayske, Nebelske, Marinka, and Novomykhailivka, with no success. The enemy also engaged by aviation in the vicinity of Vesele, Avdiivka, Vodyane, Nebelske, Marinka, Vuhledar, Pavlivka, and Prechestivka. In general, during the week, at this direction, we saw 418 encounters, and the enemy engaged almost 566 civilian infrastructure facilities. We expect the enemy to continue perform offensive directions in Bakhmut and the Avdiivka direction. In Kupiansk direction, the enemy will concentrate its efforts to retain the captured territories. The enemy will continue to redeploy troops in tactical directions in order to create quantitative advantage in manpower and weapons. On the temporarily occupied territories of the southern regions of Ukraine, the enemy continued to build up fortification lines, namely on the left bank of the region of Kherson. The enemy also concentrate artillery assets to engage Ukrainian defense forces and civilian infrastructure under Ukrainian control. Thus, in Orikhivsky direction, the enemy performed missile strikes in the vicinity of Komyshuvacha, Kushugum, and Rozumivka, as well as aviation strikes in Времівка, Ольгівське, Степове, Білогір'я, Чарівне, Щербаки, and Новоданилівка. In general, at these directions, the enemy performed 630 MLRS strikes, including mortars, as well as 68 strikes engagement of civilian infrastructure in the vicinity of Kherson and Antoniivka. We expect the enemy to retain the captured territories in these directions, as well as perform local strikes in order to improve its tactical situation. The enemy will also continue to perform strikes of units of troops, of Ukrainian troops on the right bank of the Dnipro River, redeploy troops and establish fortifications. The enemy also retains reserves and other task forces in Transnistrian and Orikhiivske direction on the territory of the occupied Crimea. The city of Jankoy and other areas turned into military bases and depots. Thus, according to our reconnaissance, in the motor pool in the vicinity of Medvedivka, there are up to 750 units of weapons and equipment. At the same time, the enemy continues to perform surface and air situation control in the vicinity of the Black and Azov Seas. From November 24, the enemy performed 40 missile attacks on the civilian, energy and military infrastructure of Ukraine. By our air defense and air forces destroyed 9 air targets, including 2 aircraft. In general, during November, the enemy launched 239 cruise missiles and employed 80 UAVs, namely Shahed 136, against Ukraine. The main targets remained the same: energy infrastructure. It states about the energy terror of Ukraine. During November, the air defense forces destroyed 72% of enemy-used cruise missiles and 80% of UAVs. The rocket and artillery troops of the armed forces of Ukraine engaged 34 command and control posts of the enemy, 47 ammunition and POL depots, as well as 100 concentration areas of the enemy. The occupants feel and know the skillful ability of our forces to wage a war. According to our information, given the losses of the enemy, the local task force commander of the Russian state, Surovikin, issued an order to prohibit any unloading and downloading works on the railroads from 100 kilometers from our contact line. However, the occupants themselves continue to destroy their comrades as well. Thus, on November 24, the Russian Armed Forces Artillery Unit destroyed positions of mobilized troops of the Russian Federation in the vicinity of Tsukore, in the temporarily occupied territory of Kherson region. As a result of a 152mm projectile attack, 14 enemy personnel died and 7 have been injured. Under such circumstances, it's obvious that the mobilized personnel of the Donetsk region do not have willing to commit war crimes in the territory of Kherson, and they resort to any measures to avoid participation in facilities. At the same time, the Russian special sources are seen to increase the flow of deserters of the Russian occupied forces who try to cross Ukrainian-Russian border and flee to Russia. Thus, according to our data, we From 10 to 60 personnel are being held and captured. The armed forces of Ukraine continue to do its best to force the Russian forces to come back to their territory, and the Russian invaders had no other choice. Please believe in the armed forces of Ukraine, in its defenders, and we will win. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Brigadier General, for your information. And now, please welcome the representative of the National Guard of Ukraine, Colonel Mykola Urshalovych. Good morning, everyone. Welcome our guests and spectators who are watching us online. And now, as for the contribution of the National Guard of Ukraine for the victory, the National Guard SS continue to perform their tasks alongside the Ukraine Defense Forces. Namely, they participate in defensive actions in the vicinity of Slobozhansk, Donetsk, and Tavrisk direction, the defense of such cities in the area of responsibility, participation in stabilization measures in the vicinity of Volyn, Polissa, Siversk, and Bessarabsk regions, participation in territorial defense in the southern western operational zone, maintaining law and order and compliance with martial law around Ukraine, and other efforts. The main efforts of our units were aimed at deterring the enemy in Kupiansk, Slovyansk, Siversk, Bakhmut, and Avdiivka and Novopavlovsk directions. The enemy performs constant offensive actions in the vicinity of Bakhmut and Kurdyumivka. In these directions, the enemy uses forces of private military companies, airborne assault forces, and motorized infantry brigades from the 1st and the 2nd Army Corps. Thanks to maneuver and organized defense and our iron will of the forces of the armed forces and National Guard of Ukraine, we managed to maintain and retain our positions. Thus, on November 23rd, the personnel of the and motor crews of the Petros-Toroshenko Brigade, alongside the rocket artillery troops of the armed forces of Ukraine, performed attacks and assault actions in the vicinity of Bakhmut. As a result, 79 soldiers have been killed. On November 26, the enemy infantry fighting vehicles have been destroyed by the Korsar Special Detachment of the National Guard. On November 26 and November 27, the units of the Serhieiev Brigade destroyed 3 ammunition dumps, 1 mortar crew, and 6 Russian servicemen. Under constant fire conditions, our troops covered the state border in the vicinity of Kharkiv regions. In Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia directions, the enemy launched 7 aviation strikes, 109 MLRS strikes, and other cannon, artillery, and mortar strikes. Despite such intensity, Khortitsa unit and Dmitro Vishnevetsky brigade units, including Bogdan Zavada regiment servicemen, engaged the enemy. In general, during the previous week, artillery units of the National Guard performed 93 fire attacks in order to engage the manpower and other assets of the enemy. The reconnaissance units detected 671 targets of the enemy. The electronic warfare maneuver group reconnaissance in Donetsk region proved to be in highly success because they detected 285 targets of the enemy. Thanks to these actions, National Guard units alongside the armed forces of Ukraine destroyed the targets. The National Guard aviation performed 10 combat flights in order to engage the enemy. The engineer units of the National Guard continue to perform the build-up of mine and other fortification systems in order to protect the installations of critical infrastructure and energy facilities. 28 demining teams performed their work, and thus they detected 147 IED and searched for 5 hectares of terrain. The National Guard units are being maintained and equipped with winter uniform with the winter white camouflage. In general, we received 1,500 of mask sets, including 10,000 suits. The National Guard units continue to perform and maintain law and order during martial law in the 19 regions of Ukraine and including the capital. During the previous week, the National Guard units detained 1,404 persons, including 17 under suspicion for war crimes against the national security of Ukraine. National Guard personnel, alongside other defense forces, is engaged in anti-terroristic and counter-sabotage measures in Rivne, Ivano-Frankivsk, Lviv, Zakarpattia, Dnipro regions, including the occupied Kharkiv and Kherson regions. The National Guard units continue to perform stabilization measures in the de-occupied areas of Mykola and Kherson regions. During the course of such measures, in the vicinity of 3 settlements of Mykola region, 15 persons have been captured for the probable cooperation with the enemy. In addition, in order to stabilize the situation on the liberated territories, the National Guard performs tasks at 27 checkpoints in Kherson and the region itself. They are on patrol of 3 settlements, and they also perform security and protection of state and transport infrastructure. After the liberation of cities from the Russian occupants, our population will still need some time to forget the Russian peace atrocities and get used to a normal life. This week, Mikhailo Hrushevsky National Guard Brigade units sent the necessities and medications and food products to the citizens of the occupied settlements in the vicinity of Mykolaiv. More than 70 National Guard servicemen are engaged in blood donations and thus ensuring the high level of blood protection in Ukraine. I also want to share some information that on November 24 and 26, according to the regular POW exchange, we managed to bring back 23 servicemen of the National Guard of Ukraine. They are being treated. Ukraine will win. Thank you for attention and glory to Ukraine. Thank you, our National Guard servicemen and Colonel Urshalovych for his report. And now please welcome Colonel of the Civil Protection Service, Oleksandr Khorunzhyi. Good morning, glory to Ukraine. I want to briefly inform you on the State Emergency Service operation and works on the occupied territories. as well as on the Invincible Stations centers operation around Ukraine. From the beginning of the war, State Emergency Service units performed 70,000 operation and works to perform disaster relief, and we put out 13,285 fires. In general, 7,265 rescuers, including 2,331 units of equipment, are on duty. However, such number can be increased to 13,000. Now, as for the Kherson and Mykola regions, as for now, we processed and performed our work in the railroad station in the Kherson and the railroad track from Mykolaiv to Kherson. We also performed coverage of 100% of hard road of Mykolaiv to Kherson cities, including 67 kilometers. In general, we were able to demine 11.5 square kilometers out of 8.8 thousand of square kilometers on the deoccupied territories of Kherson and Mykolaiv regions. As for now, the main efforts are aimed at demining of energy, water, and gas and heat systems, including the communication system. In the region of Kherson, we managed to track and survey 99 installations. In Mykolaiv region, 43 installations, 4 for the previous day. In general, the State Emergency Service equipment disposed of over 12,500 IEDs. We talk about 6,000 of IED in Kherson region and 5,665 IED in Mykolaiv region. We engaged 25 special detachments from the whole Ukraine, including 147 people and 60 units of equipment. And now, as for fire protection, we resumed work of 9 fire rescue units and 2 temporary fire posts around Ukraine. We also performed duty of up to 200 State Emergency Service personnel and 24 pieces of equipment. As for our composite detachment, I want to say that from the very beginning of our operation, we removed 1,395.5 tons of building constructions on 3 installations. We also removed the debris of 22 kilometers of roads and performed supply of technical water to the population. In the city of Kherson, we deployed 18 invisible stations from the State Emergency Service, where 25,000 of people can be treated there. We also tried to perform internet connection for the medical facilities around Ukraine. The State Emergency Service continues to perform the set of measures to restore life protection and interaction with military command and region military administration, as well as other civil protection institutions. As for the deployment of invisible stations by the State Emergency Service. In general, the State Emergency Service deployed 1,086 357 invisible centers, including 753 stationary and 302 mobile. On the tent basis, 2 of them are on the vehicle basis. In such centers, we provide heating, water, light from the generators and communication. Thousands of Ukrainians have visited such stations, and more of them come with children and relatives. And our main task is to ensure that Ukrainians can find the place to warm up, charge their phones and other gadgets, and call their relatives. They can feel safe. I want to say that 100,000 of personnel have been assisted and treated there, and all these measures are performed in accordance with the regulations. Thank you for your attention. Glory to Ukraine, and we'll win. Thank you, the spokesperson of the State Emergency Service. And now please welcome Police General of the 3rd rank, Oleksii Serhieiev. Good morning, everyone. Dear colleagues, today we'll focus on the organization of work on assistance to citizens of Ukraine during blackouts. Despite the losses on the front line, the enemy continued to threaten peaceful population of our state and try to deprive them of electricity, water and heat. Every day we fix and document enemy shellings targeting the infrastructure and energy installations. The electricity disruptions pose a task for us, so we can provide and ensure the safety operation of our forces. And during the last weeks, our police forces proved their effectiveness during the recent disruptions and blackouts. Namely, our special line operators of the 102 hotline continue to work and receive calls from our citizens trying to stay in shelters during Russian attacks. Our 102 hotline unit is equipped with generators. If there is no mobile or cellular connection, we can call the special line 102 from stationary communication systems. In addition, every citizen can address and approach the police station or police duty guard on the street if there are any cases of violation of their rights, or just to receive help. In case of a large-scale electricity blackout, we perform the alarm, gathering of personnel at a certain place. After that, the police officers, alongside the National Guard units and representatives of other services, are engaged in patrols on our cities and streets of Ukraine. Such routes of patrols are developed and elaborated to cover the special installation sites, markets, train stations, bank units, etc. As for now, our duty guards are of up to 7,000 personnel. These guards and duty personnel are aimed at being informed and inform the citizens of Ukraine using the loudspeakers on the air raid and missile danger signals. We also invite our citizens in need to police stations to get some warmth and heat. Territorial units and police departments are equipped with generators, internet access, potable water, and other assets. You can charge your phones and other devices there. And now, as for the criminal situation during the last week, we did not fix any outbreak of criminal events during the electricity shortcoming and blackouts. We also didn't fix any threatening and escalation of the potential situation. Indeed, on the other side, we registered 97.1 thousand of messages on criminal proceedings and crimes, which is 3% less during the previous week. During the week of blackout, if you compare with the previous week, we also check and can see the increase of and improvement of security situation on the roads. In addition, the number of traffic accidents reduced by 13% and the number of wounded reduced by 22% and killed by 5%. The patrol police duties perform regulation of traffic during the light disruptions. The National Police of Ukraine continues to perform stabilization measures on the temporarily deoccupied territories of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kharkiv, Mykola, and Zaporizhzhia regions, and we try to unveil and document the war crimes of the aggressor state. Thank you for your attention. We believe in our law enforcers. Thank you, General, for your information. And now, please welcome the representative of the Central Military Scientific Directorate of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Colonel Mykola Danyliuk. Good morning, everyone. Amid the absence of success and the inability to achieve victories on the battlefield, the Russian terrorist state continues to perform missile attacks on the civilian infrastructure installations around Ukraine. In such massive attacks, they use different types of air assets. Thus, on October 31, from 7:02 to 10:05 this year, the enemy carried on a regular air attack on the infrastructure installations around Ukraine, including 50 cruise missiles. Most of them were Kh-101 and 3M-14, namely caliber missile. In the vicinity of Subich and Knyazpil, settlements of Kamenets-Podilsky district of the region of Khmelnytsky, as well as in Zastavne, settlement in Lviv region, we saw the fragments of strategic cruise missiles, which up to October 31 this year were not used. The specific feature of such missiles is that they were not equipped with the explosive warhead, as you can see on this podium. As a result of our trophy and perspective weapons and military equipment research center, which is headed by me, we defined that such fragments and pieces belong to strategic cruise missile Kh-55SM. Kh-55 is a Soviet strategic air-based cruise missile designed to engage high-priority ground targets. It is a subsonic, low-flying, relief bypassing missile. The initiative of creation of such missile have been found in 1971. the development of such missile was done by the Radugha Design Bureau, and such missile was issued in 1980. This change of tactics of such missile use, namely with unequipped warhead, results from first things first, demonstration actions in order to distract attention of the Ukrainian air defenses and deplete or exhaust it. At the same time, modern Russian cruise missiles, namely KH-101 and 3M14 caliber, are aimed at civilian infrastructure installation and residential quarters, thus increasing their effectiveness. In other words, we can say that the launch of such missiles cruise missiles is aimed at covering and unveiling as well as exhaustion of Ukrainian air defenses. I want to say that even unequipped with explosive warhead missiles still pose a high danger with collateral damage, and it results from the kinetic energy and the unexploded fuel. Secondly, Russian reserves of strategic cruise missiles are exhausted and depleted as well. I want to say that such KH-55SM missiles have been erased with their markings and serial numbers. You can see on this slide. And I know that we understand who resorts to such actions. Primarily, I mean criminals and terrorists who try to cover the tracks of a committed crime. Thank you for your attention, and glory to Ukraine. Thank you, Colonel Mykola Urshalovych. And now I welcome our speakers to come to the podium and we can take your questions. Please, welcome. We have a mic in the hall, so please, we are ready to take your questions. Good morning, everyone. Army Inform. I have the question to Hanna Maliar. From our information, we know that the enemy's morale is hurt. What is the result of this? Thank you for your question. We indeed inform what we can talk about in public. We do this, and we receive information from different channels. And the signs we see are that the representatives of the regular armed forces of the Russian Federation resort to mutation of themselves so they cannot be sent to the battlefield. We know the suicide cases. We also know the Russian Federation uses protection detachments and crews so they can not give the enemy the way to flee and force them to move only forward. We also know the difficulties with the mobilization held in the Russian Federation. We also know that our servicemen find diaries of the Russian forces, and recently we had a diary of a Russian serviceman where he describes the demoralization process. He writes about the low level of military command and their treatment to regular servicemen, and they are always left abandoned. They have no food, clothing and other material, and their combat spirit, their morale is decreasing. In addition, the territories liberated by Ukrainian forces also hurts morale of the enemy. And that is why they try to find the quick victories so they can raise their morale. And in such case, they want to advance to the Donetsk region. I'm Tatiana Danyliuk. I also heard the question to Hanna Maliar. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine has announced that from today, the combat veterans from now on have to certify their license of the combat veteran. What can you tell about this? We raise the awareness of our population concerning the sources and ways of how our veterans can certify their documents, and it will make the process easier for the Ministry of Defense to issue such documents. And because this is a great challenge for the armed forces of Ukraine and for the Ministry of Defense, because we have lots of servicemen and defenders now, and that is why it's done in order to keep the pace of this status stable. Please, Oleksandr Khorunzhyi, military courier. I had the question to Colonel Danyliuk. You mentioned that the part of senior number, what can you tell about this? And the second question, is the replacement of warhead the so-called step for further use of nuclear warhead? Thank you. For the erased numbers, we have such clues that it can be missiles, where a long time ago Ukraine sent to the Russian Federation, and that is why they try to erase the number. And as for the second question about the possibility to install nuclear warhead, during the modification works and research, we probed the radiation, and the fragment of such missile showed the normal level of radiation tolerance, and it states that there was no contact with any nuclear warheads. And I think they do this in order to deplete and exhaust our air defenses. And as you know, such missiles can change the course and the altitude in several parts of the trajectory, so they can also distract our air defenses and engage other targets. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Good morning, everyone. I had a question to Colonel Mykola Urshalovych. You know that we have invincible stations working around Ukraine. Is the National Guard engaged in the operation of such centers? Thank you for your question. The National Guard of Ukraine not only protects the state, but also protects every citizen of Ukraine. That is why in such a difficult state and time for Ukraine, the National Guard could not abandon our positions and our stances, and that is why the National Guard provides assistance to the population, namely within such centers. Now I will name the measures. The National Guard Command made a decision to increase the number of patrols guarding and being on duty in the cities, as well as to close the routes of patrol near these invincible stations. That is why we increased the number of mounted and dismounted patrols, and I know that in Kyiv the number of such mounted patrols increased on 10. During the briefing of such patrols, before the duty guard, we performed a detailed briefing and debriefing of how to help and assist every citizens addressing to them. Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Kyiv channel. I had the question to Colonel Mykola Danyliuk concerning this fragment. As far as I understand, the warhead was empty, or were there any dummy inside? In such a fragment, this fragment was in the warhead compartment. So it was used as a replacement of the nuclear warhead in these missiles. So the fuel compartment was the same, but the warhead was this one on the podium. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Do you have any other questions? Okay, dear colleagues, if you have no questions, we are about to finish our event. We had a briefing at the Military Media Center, the only communication platform of the Ukraine Defense and Security Forces. We believe in our forces and we support our forces. Glory to Ukraine, and see you next weeks. Thank you.